Well, hi again, folks. I'm Greg Flynn, the Public Information Director here for the City of Pearl, and welcome into Under the Dome, where we're going to head over to the state legislature and find out what's going on as they approach the end of the session. We are joined today by a familiar face, Representative Gene Newman, and he has brought us a very special guest. He is the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, and that's Representative Jason White. Welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Good to be with you. Good to be here in Pearl today.
One of the things people ask a lot of times is, what is a pro tem? Well, we've learned that with Senator Kirby, that he is second in command of the Senate. So Jason here is second in command over at the House, so that when the Speaker is away, you're in charge, right? Is that how that works?
Well, something like that. There's probably an instruction sheet that's left around when he's gone. When I'm speaking to my Lions Club or Rotary Club or on the speaking circuit, people, especially in my district, early on they were like, "Well, what does the pro tem do?" And I said, "Well, I can explain the difference in the Speaker and the Speaker pro tem this way. The Speaker has a really big office, really nice office that has a bathroom in it. The Speaker pro tem's office used to be a bathroom." That's a true story.
That's an excellent way to put it.
And so that kind of relates it in a way folks can understand, and it's true.
Well, for all you guys, whether you're leadership or whether you're regular representatives on the floor, this is getting down to crunch time over there at the Capitol building. We're getting close to the end of the session. Where do you think we stand?
We are. We're in the final 2 weeks. This is kind of the final sprint. Kind of most of your general legislation is either been passed and gone on to the governor for his signature and become law or not, or it's in what we call conference, which means the Senate's passed a version, the House has passed a version, we don't really agree on each other's changes they want to make, so we have a vote on what's called inviting conference, and that's where 3 House members and 3 Senate members will meet on any particular bill and try to work out the differences and report back to their respective chambers with the quote compromise, and see if they can get an affirmative vote on whatever the compromise is. If not, it dies in conference with the end of session. Now, in addition to that, on general legislation, the other big thing that's going on, of course, is the budget, which is typically done the last 2 weeks. That'll be what most of the work is about at the Cap this week, is how to spend your tax dollars. And we again have taken in, or looks like we're going to take in, well in excess of $7 billion. So there's money available to spend. Last year our budget was about $6.3 billion. So the question becomes, how do we spend that money this year? How much of it do we spend? We continue to have, robust savings, and the rainy day fund is full, and we have a couple of $1 billion in the bank. We won't borrow any money again this year. This will be the 3rd year in a row we hadn't borrowed money, which is a good place to be for us as a state, and we're proud of that. We're operating only on recurring revenues and not spending one-time money on recurring expenses, that kind of thing. Boring things that aren't real fun and sexy to talk about, but from a budgetary standpoint, it's a good place to be for a state and for folks to know that their tax dollars are being spent wisely and conservatively.
Well, and it's something that you all have talked about. You've taken that money, and the Senate just redid the education formula. So there's more money coming to the school districts because of the way you guys did the formula. There's more money for teachers. You guys made sure the teachers got the raises that they so desperately needed and so deserved, right? So I guess with all that extra money, one of the things that Senator Kirby and Representative Newman have talked about a lot is the crisis that we're having in health care. What they can do to, as a state legislature, what vehicles you have to help that. One of the things we discussed last week with the Lieutenant Governor was the nursing program that's going to be coming to Hines Community College, the Rankin campus here, which hopefully will be a game changer in helping to get more nurses into the hospitals.
That's right. That's right. Not only that, last year we provided funds for Hines to beef up their nursing school, but also for Holmes Community College. They're building a new facility in Ridgeland that'll be solely devoted to a new nursing school there and increase their capacity as well. That's some of the stuff that came out of our capital expense projects last year and our education enhancement fund dollars. A program that there's been lots of discussion. The House has a version, the Senate has a version of a bill that would make available about $100 million in grants for hospitals and providers to for whatever reason. It's based on a complex formula around patients and number of beds you have at your facility. But basically all the hospitals, including the rural ones that are hurting so much now, there will be grants available for them from that $100 million. In addition, a $25 million what we call a local provider grant program, which is for not only hospitals, but even down to doctors' clinics and offices and specialty clinics and those type things, for them to apply for those grants, kind of some matching funds to upgrade their facilities in the world of telehealth that we exist in now, that COVID kind of spurred us along a little bit in that regard, as well as other technology that we were behind the curve a little bit in Mississippi on.
Well, I know that there's a crisis in the rural areas because there's population is leaving, and it's hard to get doctors and nurses to move into those rural areas to provide service. But the thing that is really alarming is that we're seeing the metro areas that are having the crises in these emergency rooms. When you hear the horror stories of people having to sit in an emergency room bed for 2-3 days, because it's not that there's not beds upstairs. They could go upstairs, but there's no staff, whether it's doctors or nurses, that's frightening in the metro areas, right?
It really is. And I think what you see is the staffing issue. So there's just a shortage locally here for say here in the metro area where we're currently sitting in House District 61. But when the rural areas are lacking, the access to healthcare, those people go somewhere. So they end up in a metro area hospital somewhere. Family drives them somewhere. They end up, say, in the Jackson metro area. So that's a further strain on the system. And when you look at the impact that COVID has had from a healthcare worker standpoint, some folks just totally got out of the profession. They moved on to something else, or they went part-time, or they went out of state where they could make twice the money. My wife is a nurse, and she had lots of friends and peers who either just had enough and said, hey, I'm going to sit this one out because of either the regulations surrounding it or the fact that they were being asked to work, not around the clock, but all the time because of the shortages. They went out of state where they could make a pile of money doing the same thing with maybe some more flexible hours. So it's one thing that I would say, Gene and I as Republicans, we have not tackled that issue maybe over the last few years like we should have. Of course, we've got to be careful because we believe in limited government, but at the same time, I think we do have a role to play in making sure that the environment is right for healthcare to thrive and for patients to be able to have access to their providers. And of course, Mississippians deserve and want that. The question is, what role does the government and the taxpayer play in that? And that's the tricky part, is finding that sweet spot.
Well, I thought it was fascinating. The Lieutenant Governor talked about, and Senator Kirby talked about, an idea that they had where they will, if you agree to commit yourself as a nurse to stay in Mississippi for X number of years after you graduate, that they'll reimburse you, I think it was somewhere like $18,000, $6,000 a year to help pay for your education if you'll commit to staying here after you graduate.
That's right. We actually put some ARPA money toward that last year in a little different form, but much the same way, as long as you agree to stay here. We have a program here in Mississippi for physicians. It's called Rural Physicians Scholarship Program, where basically if you'll agree to stay here and practice in Mississippi in a rural setting, the state of Mississippi will pay for your medical school. And so we just kind of took that idea and shifted it over into the nursing realm, trying to attract those people and get them to commit to be here. And we feel like when we get folks to Mississippi or get them to put down some roots, they love it here and want to be here. And so it's just a matter of
if you can get them to stay here to begin with, they'll stay here.
Right.
Look, let me tell you something. There is something about this state. There is something about just the people here. I came in here December of '94 doing television, and I said, okay, I'm going to be here about a year, and then I'm going to move on to a bigger market. Guess what?
Still here.
Here I am in 2023, and I'm just like, I can't imagine living anywhere else. It is just great. Cost of living, style of living, and the hospitality is just second to none. And I've traveled all over this country. We just need to get those medical professionals to see exactly that the grass isn't greener just because it's a bigger hospital somewhere else, right?
That's right.
Well, the two things that I wanted to ask you guys about, so the governor vetoed 2 pieces of medical legislation that you guys, healthcare legislation that you all sent pretty, I don't want to say, it wasn't unanimous, but it was pretty darn close. Two pieces of legislation to him, one dealing with pre-authorizations for medical procedures to the general public. If I need a colonoscopy, you want to make sure that it's pre-authorized and fair. And the other piece of legislation was for medical reimbursements from insurance companies to facilities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's vetoed them and sent them back to you all, or just killed them.
He has vetoed those bills. They were both Senate bills. They received unanimous votes in the Senate, I believe, both bills, and in the House it was over 110 votes for one and 105, I think, for the other, maybe 5 or 6 no votes total. And so they passed overwhelmingly, and certainly those votes are more than a 2/3 vote, which would be required to override a veto. The governor had a problem with, he articulated in his veto message what his problems were with each bill. He thought that the insurance bill, looking at reimbursements and giving our Commissioner of Insurance the ability to look at those and see and compare us to other states, is what that bill was about. He thought that was getting over into the world of private contracts and getting in between folks that are contracting for something, and thought that was an overreach from government. We saw it simply as looking at how our providers are being paid compared to providers in other states. The same insurance companies that operate in Mississippi operate in Tennessee and in Alabama and in Louisiana and Arkansas. And so, there's this prevailing, well, I start to say theory, but I think there's facts out there that providers in other states are reimbursed more for the exact same procedures than our providers are done in Mississippi. And so we wanted to see how our rates compare with our reimbursements related to our neighbors. Specifically, if a Mississippian has a procedure done out of state, is that provider paid more than if the same procedure was done in Mississippi? And so that bill was simply an attempt to give our commissioner the ability to look inside those contracts and see how other providers are reimbursed in other states and compare them to our states. And that was kind of on the heels of the huge disagreement that you saw kind of play out publicly between Blue Cross Blue Shield and UMMC over the last year.
Now, when you talk about that, is it possible that when we just talked about the crisis before, that hospitals aren't able to, I don't want to say they're not able, but they're not paying doctors, nurses as much as other states? Is that directly tied together, that if we were to fix that you would be able to keep more of your healthcare providers here?
Well, I think it would certainly be a factor, because what we hear from providers, hospitals, as well as specialty clinics, as well as doctors, is that their reimbursements are low compared to our neighbors in other states. And so we just wanted to look at that. It wasn't going to do anything other than give us the ability to look at it and come back to the table, so to speak. And so, I'm
going to add one thing to that. One of the biggest problems that all hospitals have is getting paid. Regardless of what the reimbursement rate is, if you don't pay it, it's not doing any good. And one of their biggest problems is they're not getting paid. They're insurance. It's not just Medicaid or Medicare. It's the insurance companies, and for whatever reason, they delay 6 and 9 months. Well, you take any business out here. You can take a little small mom and pop business out here. If they don't get paid, they can't stay in business. And that's what's killing the hospitals, is they're not getting paid timely.
No, and you see, I've seen several folks with big hospital bills that they go in for, I don't know, a burn, and you wind up getting a bill for $500,000, $600,000, right? The insurance company gives them a portion, which is on the statement, and then the hospital says, okay, well, we want X amount of dollars from you, maybe $2,000 out of the remaining $475,000, and then the rest is just quote unquote written off, right? That just doesn't, it doesn't make sense.
Nobody understands it. Nobody understands it, which, that's a problem in and of itself. And so we didn't see the harm, and actually we thought it was a good thing to have our Commissioner of Insurance and his staff to be able to kind of take a overhead look and kind of look into that deal and see what we could do different and what we could do better, and how our people in Mississippi are affected by it. Now, you also speak to the prior authorizations bill, which was a separate bill dealing specifically with providers as they deal with insurance companies and getting procedures authorized on the front end before the colonoscopy, before the test, before the MRI. It was a way to speed up that, and in some cases kind of set it to the side. If you've had providers that have been good actors, have never been a problem when it comes to prior authorizations, or the insurance company has said, hey, you're ordering too many of these tests, we think you don't need all these tests, and kind of dinged the provider. These were for providers who didn't have those things on their record, who have been good actors and not been a problem, to kind of speed up the process for them. And so, again, it's about getting paid. It's about those providers getting paid and not doing tests on you as a patient and then finding out, well, the insurance company wants to meet and talk about 3 of those things you did to old Greg because they don't think you needed them. And the doc's like, well, wait, I've been practicing for 20 years. I had never had this problem. Why are we here now? So anyway, it'll be interesting to see. Those are Senate bills. So the way procedure works in the legislature, when a governor vetoes any legislation, the veto message is sent to both chambers, but the bill itself, in theory, comes back to the chamber where it originated. In this case, these were Senate bills. The House we had companion bills that matched, and we just ended up taking a Senate bill. So the House is very much on board with them as we, of course, passed them. So the Senate will have to start an override vote, which would require a 2/3 vote, and then if they could get the votes necessary to override, it would come to the House, where we would, of course, take the vote up as well.
Well, now, I'm a journalism guy. I was never very good at math. But if a Senate bill passed unanimously and it comes back to them with a veto needing a 2/3, I would think that you could probably get a unanimous vote once again to override that veto. But that's ultimately going to be up to the lieutenant governor if he wants to do an override, right?
That other animal creeps into the room called politics, Greg. And so folks start, deciding is what their governor wants worth more or less than legislation that they just voted on a couple of weeks ago.
Unanimously, so we'll see.
So it'll be interesting to see it play out.
Well, before I let you go, I do have a question of a topic that popped up late last week and over the weekend, that the city of Jackson now says that they just want to be able to forgive $13 million in water debt that customers have not paid over years. There was initially talk that the federal government was going to give them a grant to cover that portion. That apparently is not the case, that the federal government is not giving the city of Jackson money. And they came out saying that, okay, well, we're just going to forgive the $13 million. But all of a sudden, red flags went up and said, you can't do that under the state law constitution.
That's right. We actually have specific statutes and laws that prohibit it, as well as our Constitution prohibits it. So I'm sure this could be an excellent law school exam about, you got the federal government coming in a takeover situation, and so they probably want to say, oh, well, the Fed rules controls, but that's not necessarily the case, and it's certainly not the case with the municipal water system in Mississippi. In my other life, I'm an attorney and I represent municipalities, and certainly you cannot, a municipality does not have the legal authority to forgive debt of any kind. And so, and there are specific statutes on utilities as well. I saw a thread last night going on Twitter where some much more scholarly lawyers than me were debating this topic, and they all agreed you just can't do it. So it'll be interesting to see it play out. I also thought it was just, I don't know why this thought prevails that, hey, we need $20 million or $13 million to give folks to pay their delinquent water bills. I mean, if we're going to do that in Jackson, are the feds going to send money for the folks in Pearl? Or are they going to send
I don't think the
money
grant
for the folks in Kosciuszko? It's very odd to me, but it also exposes the fact that what we all dance around, and well, maybe some people are starting to say it, but a well-run water system doesn't have that. I saw where figures as much as $95 million in delinquent water bills for the city of Jackson.
That's insane.
There's no way you can make a system work and run, not only not efficiently, but even make it run at all and keep it open if you have that kind of outstanding debt on your water system.
That was not from the federal government.
That's
loan
correct.
forgiveness. It was actually from some foundation. I believe it was a Soros funded deal, and the money didn't come through. So I think that's where that forgiveness program was at. The problem with the water system, several years back, the city of Jackson had a water department that worked. They did their own billing, and it wasn't perfect, but it functioned. They billed, they got paid. They went out and cut your water off if you didn't pay for your bill, that kind of stuff. When they went to this Siemens contract, is when everything went offline with billing, and the billings are not only affecting the water and the sewage, but that billing's also affecting their garbage pickup, because these people aren't paying bills. They're not getting billed, so they don't know what to pay. And if they send something out there, it's some estimate and it's some ridiculous amount. A homeowner's been paying $30 a month for years, and now all of a sudden they're expected to pay $2,000 or $3,000. It's ridiculous what they're trying to pull off. But the problem is if you go to the city of Jackson to the water department, there's nobody working there. They sent everybody to Memphis at some point in time, or terminated these people and hired some company in Memphis. That was when the Siemens deal, and now they don't have a way to build. They'd have to build a whole new water department in terms of billing and stuff. It's just nuts. I don't know what the answer is going to be with that.
Well, one of the things that the popular notion is from the surrounding counties and then from all over the state is, well, that's Jackson's problem. Okay, they can't manage themselves. But on the flip side, the bigger issue is that is what we are known for nationally. For better or worse, Jackson is the capital city, and when companies look to invest here and want to move here, they still look to the capital city. Right. And when all they see is this horrible news, not only for crime, but with failing infrastructure, that I don't think we can take that notion of, well, that's just Jackson's problem. And right. You guys have made some steps to try and address those things, but at some point, for public health and well-being, there's got to be something more that the state can do. I don't want to talk about, there's people that have talked about conservatorship, much like they did in Michigan, with the city of Detroit, to get that back on track. I don't know if that's the answer here, but it's something that I think is going to be not just this session, but sessions to come.
Isn't that basically what they've done with the EPA?
That's basically what they've done with sending Hennepin went in for the water system. He's basically taken it over. That's why I wasn't so crazy about passing the Senate bill that created a new water board, if you will, a regional water board, because probably for the next, who knows, 2 to 5 years, the feds will be here running the Jackson water system. And so I didn't want to see us get tied up in the middle of that. Let's see where they are and see what they do. But you're right. So many of my constituents are like, they want, when I see them, when I'm in Kosciuszko or Carthage, working, they're like, whatever you do, don't spend any of our money on the city of Jackson. And so I hear them, and I certainly heed that warning. But the reason you've seen so much brain power, time, energy, and effort go into trying to fix Jackson's problem legislatively, or at least help with it, is because we do recognize what you pointed out, that in a lot of instances, it is the face of Mississippi. Folks fly into Mississippi, most likely they fly into Jackson. They end up here at our capital city, whatever they're doing, and this is what they see. And they experience it in a real way and go back and tell folks about it. So there is something to be said for us having skin in the game, so to speak, from a statewide standpoint. So that's why you see us trying to at least help with the water issue and the crime issue especially. And folks that want to deny that's not a real issue are just avoiding the obvious.
And they love to say that all municipalities, which we agree with, are sovereign. You have your own elected officials. That's who you answer to. But the problem with Jackson is, no, it is not the current administration's failure. It's been several administrations' failure. But when they're not recognizing the problem and finding solutions is where somebody's eventually got to step up and say, your citizens need help, and you're not providing that. whether it was this administration or 5 administrations before, right?
Correct. You've got the capital city who today, as we sit here, really doesn't have a functioning jail that works for the city for the inmates.
They don't have a jail. They haven't had a jail in a long
That's what
time.
I'm saying. The capital city. You know, it just baffles me that that's where we are. And the answer is, or their response is, it's the state's fault, or it's the governor's fault, or it's the legislature's fault. Well, at some point, you gotta look in the mirror a little bit. And we do want to help. The state wants to help. The legislature wants to help. The question is, what does that look like?
Your Capitol Police have certainly done a big push to help out. And I saw the numbers that they released about over the year, how many arrests and tickets they've written. I think it's great, but as Gene has talked about many times in the past, you can write as many misdemeanor tickets as you want, but if nobody's collecting on them or enforcing them, so that's like a weird number when you see that, yeah, they're trying to, crack down on misdemeanor crimes, but it doesn't seem to do any good, right?
Well, they're taking everything to justice court. They're not taking it to city court, so in Hinds County. So they're at least getting some. Hinds County Justice Court has the ability to collect fines. They have the ability to enforce the laws. The city of Jackson's court, because of the agreement that they signed, they're not capable of enforcing misdemeanor law at all. They're non-functional. Until they get out from under that court order, they have no misdemeanor abilities.
Well, the legislature, you guys are about to, I think, in conference, going to expand the jurisdiction to allow Capitol Police to.
Lots of debate on where those lines go to or what that looks like. Everything from jurisdiction citywide to keeping it where it is to just expanding what the current boundaries are. And so lots of debate on what that looks like. And in addition to that, are we going to have judges in place to hear those cases as they come before the court? So interesting times for sure.
I want to have an ear to the wall on that conference committee when they meet about that issue. That will be pretty good, won't it?
Yeah, it will be. It will be.
All right, so you guys are supposed to go home the first week of April, right? April 1st?
We're hoping to leave before that.
Well, on the calendar, you're supposed to be working.
April the 3rd.
Yeah, April the 3rd. Okay, so that would be Monday.
That's
2 weeks from today, I think.
All right, and you're hoping to get done before that. So the big conference weekend is coming up next weekend.
This coming weekend.
If we have it.
If you have it.
I wish we would have a lot of things done before then, but I've learned not get my hopes up around here.
As they always like to say, it's the sausage making process.
You don't want to see it.
You just want to see what pops out on the other end. You don't want to see how they make it and the ingredients
That's right.
that go into it all the time. Mr. Speaker, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
I do appreciate it.
You want to talk about the future any?
Well, I didn't know if we wanted to talk about that. We are losing a Speaker of the House. So Philip Gunn has decided he's not going to run for re-election. So that's going to leave a big empty chair when we gavel in after the elections for the next session. Most of the time you look and you see, the second in command will just kind of rise up. Is that your desire?
Well, it's not always the case that the second in command just rises up, as you say. No, it's no secret. I've been trying to, gauge interest and talk to my colleagues about a run for Speaker. And so, as you know, we've got elections this year.
Oh, yeah.
And so, everybody's got to get reelected, those of us that have opponents, and check the landscape after elections and that sort of thing. So we're working hard. I've worked hard over the last year to position my political action committee, Mississippi House Leadership Fund, to be able to help other House members in their races around the state. So we're going to be very involved in helping members run their campaigns and get reelected, and then we'll see where we are in the fall. I look forward to that conversation and the potential possibility for sure.
He knows he's got the Rankin County delegation's vote. So.
Well, Rankin County delegation has been very supportive.
What do they like to call it, Gene? What do they call us?
The Rankin County Mafia.
The Rankin County Mafia. So, not that we like organized crime, but if you have them on your side,
those cats stick together over here too. Let me just tell you. Everybody talks about the Coast delegation. It's the Rankin County Mafia. You got to watch out.
Well, we are very blessed in two very active, proactive, and common sense representatives from here. So we have Representative Newman and we have Senator Kirby, who, they just really advocate for the city of Pearl, and they make sure they don't ask for things that are pie in the sky. If they have something that they come to you with, it's legit and they can prove the need for it. And I think that's what we need more of around the state, is folks coming to you with, okay, I can move this dirt right now, and here's why it's important that we move this dirt right now. And we're just blessed to have these guys. So when we call them the Rankin County Mafia, Gene and Dean are two of our strongest advocates that make sense.
They are, but they have good relationships with their colleagues from all over the state that are in the legislature, and they help them with their projects and things, so that when they do show up with an issue for Pearl, people are willing to sit down and listen, and certainly they get the benefit of the doubt because of the fact that they're common sense guys who get it, so to speak, and relationships matter inside the dome for sure.
110%. Well, I wish you guys luck as you head to the finish line.
Thank you.
I hope you don't come back battered and bloodied after the sine die, but I know it's a big task, not only for the general legislation, but then figuring out how to spend all this money and keep everybody happy. Whew. Good luck with all of that.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, that is going to do it for Under the Dome in this segment. You can check legislation as it progresses, even the conference weekend, and see what bills come out, what the compromises are. All you have to do is go to the legislature's website at legislature.ms.gov and keep an eye on it for yourselves. An informed public is a very smart public, so be engaged. I'm Greg Flynn. This has been Under the Dome. We will talk to you again very soon.